Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto got demon body after death and X multiple girls? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Duque for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Let's start this video. He leapt through the large trees as quickly as he could, but the bundle in his arms slowed him down. Hattori Shinji, a Rain Chunin, struggled to force air into his lungs as he fled from a group of Konoha ninja on this particularly warm summer night. This is perhaps the fastest he has ever run, his pace driven by fear and adrenaline, but it makes no difference when his pursuers outclass him by such a large margin. Shinji can sense a massive chakra signature approaching him that would overtake him soon. He would have to switch to the contingency plan that was set up for just such a case as this. He and the rest of the ninja that had taken this mission had been briefed on the way to destroy the thing if worse came to worst. If the hidden rain could not have the demon, then those leaf bastards would not get it back. Apparently, these things are incredibly hard to kill, and if you don't do a thorough job, a demon vessel can pull through even what is normally fatal. So, as he entered a clearing, Shinji took the bundle off his shoulder and began preparations for the destruction of an unconscious 8-year-old blonde boy. As he worked, he remembered how the whole mess started. He was actually the lowest-ranked member on the team with 3 other jounin, only along for support and his mediocre skills as a medic. They had handed him the QB vessel after it was obvious they were being followed and stayed behind to stall the Leaf Ninja. This mission was too important to the village of Rain to worry about one's own life. His village had thought that with the power of a tailed beast, Rain could become one of the greater villages. They had discovered the QB's imprisonment and its vessel's horrible treatment, so they assumed the act of brainwashing the child would be relatively easy. Hell, as long as they didn't actively mistreat the child, he would see how much better Rain was than Konoha. If that didn't work, they had ninja who specialized in psychology who could easily manipulate the young, attention-starved child. Shinji and 1 jounin had waited outside of the village while the 2 other jounin snuck into Konohagakure and retrieved the little boy. They wore nothing to identify themselves as Rain ninjas, so they were safe from political incident. The boy had been drugged quickly after he was nabbed from the otherwise uninhabited park. Everything had been going according to plan until they were somehow noticed. They only found out they had been spotted when they sensed a group of ninja approaching rapidly. By that time they had already made it to the forest. After a brief period of fleeing, they realized it was no use and he was sent on alone with the vessel, while the jounin stalled their pursuers. Apparently his comrades were unable to stall for long, he thought as he heard the Konoha nins approaching. But they had still given him enough time, for as the Leaf Ninja had entered the clearing, he placed the last explosive tag. The Sandaime Hokage was enjoying a rather nice blend of tobacco as he sat in his office finishing up the review of several mission reports. He had opened the windows, as the room was positively stifling with them closed, and allowed the breeze as well as the moonlight to flow into the office. After he finally finished the wretched paperwork, Sarutobi decided to check in on his favorite Kitsune container. He took out his trusty crystal ball and conjured up Naruto's apartment. Failing to find him there, he searched Ichiraku's ramen stand and then the park where Naruto liked to play. When he couldn't find the boy in the usual places, he began to get worried and used his crystal ball to sweep through the village. Sarutobi was very disturbed when he finally caught sight of Naruto. This was mainly because he was slung like a sack of potatoes over the shoulder of an unknown ninja who was climbing over the village walls and into the forest. The Hokage flared his churka and moments later 2 Anbu appeared in his office. Speaking quickly and in stern voice, Sarutobi addressed one of the animal-masked ninjas. Gather Anbu Team 4 and then head towards the section of forest by the north wall. I will already be in pursuit of foreign ninjas. Cat, come with me. With that said, he and the Anbu with the cat mask sped toward the northern forest. They bounded over the wall and through the trees with Sarutobi pulling ahead of the Anbu. He may be old, but he is Hokage for a reason and his worry was driving his strides. After a few minutes of traveling, Sarutobi could sense chakra up ahead. Slowing down slightly, he continued warily through the forest. After a few more leaps, the Hokage knew he was ensnared in a genjutsu. It was very subtle and quite well done, but he wasn't known as the professor for nothing. His eyes narrowed. He did not have time for these games. Instead of dispelling the illusion of what he knew to be false surroundings, Sarutobi threw a kunai at each of the trees closest to him. One of the weak points of a genjutsu such as this was that the user would place objects over his or her hiding spots so that the target would not accidentally bump into them. Thus, the genjutsu caster was almost always disguised as some inconspicuous object. This is how the unfortunate ninja ended up with a kunai embedded in his forearm. After the illusion dispelled, due to lack of concentration caused by a pointy object lodged in an arm. The Sandaime saw that the ninja had shielded himself, and thus prepared to go in for the kill. As he started toward the man, who had a look of horror on his face as he recognized just who his opponent was, Sarutobi stopped short as an umbrella was launched above him. Rain ninja, thought the Hokage. He spared a glance at the three, as two revealed themselves, foreign ninja, and saw they had no identification to show their allegiance. These better be missing Nins, the old man thought angrily as he quickly flashed through seals, for Rain's sake. After he finished his hand seals, the Hokage quickly thrust his hands toward the umbrella and a harsh wind issued forth, causing it and its poisonous needles to be blown away, harmlessly. Eyeing the three Nins, he notices they seem to realize what their fate would be should they oppose the aging fire shadow, but they seem resigned to death. Sarutobi's eyes widened slightly in realization when he could not sense Naruto's chakra signature in the immediate area. Normally it was not possible to sense a young child's chakra, especially one who had absolutely no training in the shinobi arts, but Naruto was anything but normal. This meant these people no longer had him, or the boy was dead. The smell of blood was not present, and there was a trail heading further north, so he concluded that these men were stalling. Cat had caught up by now and prepared to engage the enemy. Sarutobi wanted to go on ahead, but he was not totally comfortable leaving the lone Anbu to face three unknown ninja. He threw a kunai at the enemy, flashed through seals, and a moment later the kunai had multiplied several times. A few had caught the enemy ninja, but no fatal wounds were inflicted. That was not his intention though, as he wanted to even the playing field for his Anbu. Turning to the masked ninja he asked, "Can you handle these men until reinforcements arrive?" "Hi, Hokage-sama," the ninja replied. Sarutobi nodded and took off towards the foreign ninja's accomplice and hopefully Naruto. One of the Nins tried to pursue, but the Anbu cut off their path. The Sandaime sped off in pursuit of whoever had Naruto by following the trail left in their wake. He was confident Cat could handle himself, as the squad he had requested would be there at any moment. Now his only concern was Naruto. After some time of high-speed travel, the old man knew he was gaining as the trail became easier to follow, showing that the Nin's steps became more and more frantic. Finally, he came to the edge of a clearing and caught sight of the ninja. He was kneeling with his back facing him, and Sarutobi was wary of a trap of some sort, but this man seemed to be the only one left. Sarutobi walked into the clearing as the ninja stood, his back still toward him. The Hokage could see that Naruto was behind him, and since he could still feel his chakra, he knew the boy was still alive. He would try and take this ninja alive for questioning. His step faltered somewhat when the ninja turned around and Sarutobi caught the deranged look in his eyes. The man smiled cruelly and spoke. "If we can't have him, then no one can." The Sandaime didn't care about questioning the man anymore as he turned toward Naruto. The old leader quickly threw a kunai that embedded into the man's skull. He dropped before he could do anything to Naruto, or so he thought. Sarutobi's relief was short-lived and replaced with horror, as he finally got an unobstructed view of Naruto. The boy was literally covered in exploding tags. The scene was only made more surreal as the boy stirred. Finally conscious of the outside world, Naruto's eyes fell on the Hokage's aged form and a smile lit up his young face. "Old man!" the boy said excitedly. The Hokage had enough time to reach his arms toward the boy before the clearing was bathed in fire. Naruto just about had it with the constant instances of being knocked unconscious only to wake for a second in an unfamiliar place, and then being knocked unconscious once more. To add to his irritation, he was now wet. Finally looking up from the puddle in which he was sitting, Naruto spied some massive gates held shut with a piece of paper. As he looked at them, the gates seemed to become transparent. This was strange, but what was even stranger was the fact that he himself no longer seemed solid. Before he could think more on this peculiar occurrence, a pair of giant red eyes and 2 rows of menacing teeth suddenly appeared in front of him. Naruto did not even manage to shut his eyes before the gaping maw lunged through the faded bars and consumed him whole. As he once more lost consciousness, he heard a malevolent voice that seemed to reverberate within his mind. "Do not lose this one, human." Sarutobi managed to sit up from the remains of a tree into which he was flung into at high speed by the concussive blast. He stood up and walked carefully into the clearing as several ANBU landed beside him, having already disposed of the 3 intruding ninja. The Hokage ignored them as he looked at the clearing in sorrow. The ninja from earlier was in 2 or 3 major pieces, but was unrecognizable. All that was left of Naruto's body was a finger here or a piece of flesh there. "Oh, Naruto," Sarutobi sighed as he fell to his knees. A tear trailed down his aging face as he thought about the boy and what he could have done differently for him. He had seen the boy as a surrogate grandson, and yet he could not save him from death or the scorn of his own village. A red glow interrupted his musings. At the epicenter of the blast, a crimson orb hovered a few feet off the ground. Great, Sarutobi thought as he prepared himself for what was to come, as if this day could not get any worse. The light from the red orb grew in intensity until smoke erupted from it to fill the clearing. Eventually, the cloud of smoke towered over the large trees of the forest. Though all those present could guess what was just unsealed, they all prayed it was not what they assumed. Sadly, their prayers went unanswered. A 9-tailed fox, the color of fresh blood, stood over the forest of Konoha. Damn you, Yondaime, the third thought as he stared upon a giant fox for the second time in his life. Many people have witnessed the aged Hokage staring wistfully at the picture of the fourth located in his office. These people assumed that he was sad that such a hero's life was cut short in a terrible tragedy. These people were wrong. No, Sarutobi was just very regretful for not kicking the total living shit out of that blonde bastard while he was still alive. Sarutobi enjoyed retirement. He was old and tired of the Hokage's responsibilities. In fact, he never really wanted the position in the first place. He was tricked by the soggy second and that wood-using son of a bitch known as the first. Women do not throw themselves at the Hokage, as he was led to believe. Instead, they throw paperwork at you. Stacks and stacks of paperwork. The fourth was seen as the greatest hero the village had ever produced. Did he do any paperwork? No. By the time he was supposed to be settling into his office, the Kyuubi had attacked. If Sarutobi didn't know better, he would have believed Yondaime sent the fox to Konoha himself, just to get out of the job. Well, Sarutobi thought, no more paperwork and maybe I'll finally get some respect when I kill myself fighting this mangy demon. When he thought of it like that, he was almost looking forward to having his soul ripped out by a vengeful death god. And I might finally see the fourth and kick his ass. Go and retrieve a baby or a small child from the village. Sarutobi, a smile on his face, barked orders to a particular NBU. The rest of yous will try and keep it busy. The masked ninja shook himself out of his fear-induced stupor long enough to nod and was about to take off when the third's voice reached him again. Wait! Sarutobi yelled, try and get a clan head's or a council member's child. As the NBU ran to the village he did not know which to be more afraid of, their doom at the hands, or paws, of the Kyuubi, or the third's maniacal laughter. Prepare yourself, Yondaime, the old Hokage thought, I'm going to give you the beating of your afterlife. Naruto was not in the best of moods when he opened his eyes once again. He was afraid to do even that as every time he did, something strange and horrible happened. This time was no exception. When he finally did open his eyes he saw that he was somehow far above the treetops. Naturally, he thought he was falling so he did what most children would do. He screamed. Ah! He started out screaming because he thought he was going to fall to his death. He finished screaming because of the evil roar he heard. Little did Naruto know, but his scream was that evil roar. Naruto, who was thoroughly freaked out right now, tried to jump to his feet, as he subconsciously realized he was not standing upright at the moment. This worked at first, but foxes are not meant to be bipeds, so he eventually tumbled and landed on his side. Sarutobi and the other ninja, who were slightly confused because the Kyuubi was acting like an idiot, took this opportunity to attack the downed fox with throwing weapons and jutsus. Naruto was still reeling from the great fall he took when he felt several pinpricks and light, burning sensations along his back. It didn't hurt as bad as falling on the hard ground and several pointy trees, but it felt like he was getting stung by bees. He rolled onto his stomach, and that's when he started to realize something was really weird. The first clue that something was wrong, other than surviving such a fall, was the fact that he had not landed upon one tree but several. The second major clue was that his arms were very hairy, and he had paws instead of hands and claws instead of fingers. The final clue, since Naruto still had not noticed the tails, was the fact that tiny little men were attacking him. Wait a minute, thought Naruto as he caught a good glimpse of one of the tiny men. Is that the old man? Aji-san, Naruto spoke, quite afraid of his own voice. What's going on? Why are you hurting me? The Sandaime was pissed. He was coming down from his kill blonde idiot and get back at the council buzz, and this giant demon bastard had to go and use Naruto's memory to strike at his heart. With a snarl, the old Hokage flew through hand seals for a strong fire attack. The fox jerked its to the side, but the dragon made of flame still bit into the creature's neck. The fox yelped and looked down at him, even while the NBU assaulted it with their best jutsus. Why, Aji-san? The demon continued to desecrate the memory of innocent boy who he considered a grandson, the boy that endured so much only to be murdered for the burden he carried. The Hokage could not stand this any longer. Silence, foul demon! Shouted the third at the top of his lungs. Naruto's sharp and rabbit-reminiscent ears picked up the old man's words. He just froze, even his tails, which up until now had been swaying to some unconscious command. Naruto could not believe it. The old man, his only friend, was just like the other villagers. He didn't know why they called him a demon or treated him the way they did. Maybe it had something to do with all the weird things that had been happening lately. He didn't remember doing anything to make so many people hate him. Why couldn't anybody tell him what was going on? A lone tear, the size of a beach ball, fell from what was now more of a muzzle than his face. He had to get away. Naruto stood on all fours, as his legs felt funny and he had a bad result when he tried to stand upright last time. With one last tearful look at the old man, he turned and ran further north. Sarutobi couldn't believe it. Had the Kyuubi just cried? It was probably another one of its tricks. But when did the Kyuubi ever have to use any tricks? When the fox attacked 8 years ago, it did not even use any illusions as Kitsune are said to favor. Now that he thought about it, he had sensed none of the overwhelming bloodlust or killing intent the fox had displayed in its past attack. As the Anbu cheered for driving away the fox, Sarutobi watched as the demon stumbled, as if drunk, deeper into the forest. This better not be a trick, the Sandaime thought, because I am not going to apologize to a demon lord for hurting its feelings. Listen up, everyone, the Hokage gathered the Anbu. We are going to follow it, but I do not want anyone to attack the fox until I order otherwise. The Anbu looked a little bit afraid to pursue the fox after it had left. One of the masked ninjas asked if they should wait for reinforcements. We cannot afford to lose the fox, Sarutobi answered, but we will wait to engage it until reinforcements and the child for the ceiling arrive. With that, all those present took off after the humongous demon. It was quite the task to keep up with the fox as its steps were so large compared to their own, but eventually they found it at the edge of lake. The fox was staring into the lake and still appeared to be crying. After running for a while, Naruto made it to a rather large lake. By now, he had come to the realization that his body did not look even remotely like it normally did. Even still, as he looked at his reflection in the water, which he could see clearly in the moonlight due to his newly enhanced sight, Naruto was quite surprised. Apparently, he was now some sort of monster. He couldn't tell exactly what animal he was, as the Kyuubi looked more like a fox crossed with a rabbit crossed with the most evil person to ever exist. But for now, he was content with calling himself a dog monster. The reflection Naruto saw in the water was not a majestic animal. It was ugly and evil. The Kyuubi had the basic body structure of a fox, but it was still a demon in nature. This warped the fox form, especially the face, into a horrible representation of what lied in the demon's heart. It was a sickening visage complete with mangled set of teeth and hateful eyes. The demon's fur was not soft like a real fox, but was sharp and hard like several blades of red metal. All of this combined frightened and sickened Naruto, even more so now that he realized he was this creature. That was how the Sandaime found the boy-turned-fox demon, crying and whimpering into the dark waters of the lake. After they caught up with the fox, which was quite the task considering its large strides, Sarutobi and the ANB waited for the rest of the Konoha reinforcements to arrive. When they finally came and a baby was prepared for sealing the demon fox, the Hokage ventured alone towards the gigantic creature. As he approached, the fox seemed to hear him and turned its massive head toward him. Tears were still in its eyes, and even though it still looked downright evil, it also had a sense of melancholy about its features. The Sandaime sighed. It was now or never. Are you Naruto or the Kyuubi? Sarutobi asked. I'm Naruto, or at least I was. The fox said mournfully. Truthfully? The Hokage ventured further. He trusted this thing about as far as he could throw it, which was not at all. Still, he couldn't figure out why else the demon would be acting like this. It seemed to be fully unsealed, so why would it not attack unless this somehow was Naruto? He still expected this to be a trick and at any moment the Kyuubi would yell gotcha, and eat him in one bite. Nonetheless, this was the first time he had heard of the giant demon speaking, so he decided to go along with it. He should be able to meet up with that bastard Yondaime if he died anyway. What's going on, Aji-san? And why did you call me that bad name? The fox sniffled as it said this. The old man in question felt horrible if this really was Naruto. But he had to protect the village, and so he had to keep control of the situation. Naruto, I'm sorry if that is really you, but I can't tell you until some other things happen. The Hokage told the giant boy. Will you allow yourself to be restrained? Sarutobi figured that if this really was the Kyuubi, it would never allow its power to be sealed. This was as much a test as it was a precaution. I guess so, Naruto spoke in his deep rumbling voice, but only if you say you don't hate me. Sarutobi sighed. This whole situation was ridiculous, but he supposed he did hurt Naruto's feelings. The boy probably thought his only friend betrayed him. Naruto, I am sorry. This whole thing is complicated, and I did not think it was you I called a demon. It was odd to see such a look of hope on the face of the great demon lord. The Hokage was mainly glad that the enthusiastic boy didn't try to glomp him like he normally would. He did not feel like becoming a pancake this night. Without further ado, the third signaled for the shinobi army waiting in the woods to come forth and begin restraining what he hoped was Naruto with wire and sealing jutsus. The shinobi thought he was crazy after the third explained, but still warily complied. It was odd to be so close to the fox. It was eerie to watch the massive beast breathe and sit calmly. As they set to work, Naruto began to speak, which frightened quite a few of the ninjas. Old man, what animal am I supposed to be now? The Sandaime knew only Naruto could ask such a stupid question. Most of his fears were abated. Now, the main problem he faced was how to smack the ignorant boy upside the head without having to get a ladder first. Sarutobi sighed. It really wasn't Naruto's fault for not knowing about the demon fox that almost destroyed his homeland. The boy hadn't yet attended the academy where he would learn the history of the village, and he also had no parents to tell him of such things. He could have learned from the other villagers during a festival that commemorated the defeat of the beast, but it was understandable that the villagers would be afraid to tell him of the demon when they considered the boy to be the fox himself. Although, that apparently wasn't far from the truth now. When he thinks about Naruto's life, it's a wonder the boy is as advanced as he is. Naruto had lived almost his entire life alone. He could only learn by watching people and with most actively shunning him. It wasn't surprising he was ignorant of many things that most people took for granted as common knowledge. The Hokage would not be surprised at all if the boy was not able to read. Naruto, your form is that of a kitsune, a fox demon, Sarutobi explained. Demon? Naruto asked, taken aback. Yes, Naruto. Do you have the Kyuubi attack that occurred 8 years ago? Kinda. I heard people talk about the Yondaime saving the village from a 9-tailed demon. Tell me, Naruto, have you noticed how many tails you have now? The Hokage prodded. He then waited patiently while Naruto turned his head and counted the appendages. 9. How so the Kyuubi was a fox? Wait a minute, I'm the Kyuubi? It was kind of amusing to watch the boy figure it out, but then realization turned to horror. So I really am a demon? The boy turned Kitsune exclaimed. No, Naruto. You are not the fox. Well, at least you weren't, Sarutobi was quick to explain, but found himself at a loss in this particular situation. During the conversation between the Hokage and the giant fox, the army of masked ninjas was attempting to restrain the beast. So far, the only thing that seemed to work was wire or rope. The chakra restriction seals, which were a pain in the ass to draw on for anyway, could not contain the raw power that the beast possessed. After the third seal literally exploded, that course of action was abandoned. After the more sophisticated methods of restraint proved futile, the ANBU decided to simply hog-tie the monstrous fox. After its legs were bound, they wrapped a large amount of wire around the 9 great tails, thus making one giant tail that stuck straight out. These operations would have been easy if it weren't for the massive size of the fox's body. It required the ANBU to work in large teams and pass the wire in a coordinated effort. Of course, this also required a large amount of wire. When they ran out of ninja wire, they switched to rope. After the fox's appendages were bound, the ANBU moved on to tying the demon down as best they could. This involved throwing numerous ropes across its body, and then binding said ropes to several of the trees in the area. After they were finally done, a blanket of rope covered the fox. The last precaution they took was to muzzle the fox with the remaining rope. They even wrapped thick steel cable, which they saved specifically for this, around the demon's snout. Naruto still seemed to be able to speak, but his words were now mumbled and slurred, so the fox had to be sealed into a newborn baby with underdeveloped chakra coils, namely you. Sarutobi was nearing the end of the explanation to how the Kyuubi was sealed into Naruto. Naruto was both relieved and angry at the same time. Relieved that he had not done something horrible to earn the scorn of the villagers, and angry because they hated him for something of which he had no control. But why did he choose me? Naruto had become more intelligible as the cable around his snout had slightly loosened during their conversation. I cannot say, Naruto. The boy was not sure by his tone if he really knew or not. In all honesty, Naruto was starting to think it was because he was an orphan who no one would care about. As if sensing his bitter thoughts, the Sandaime addressed Naruto again. Naruto, you need to know that he wanted you to be seen as a hero. It started out as snickering, but then deep and malicious laughter was heard throughout the darkness of the early morning. The contingent of ANBU that still remained a little ways away from where the Hokage and Naruto were talking began to get nervous. Sarutobi himself was a little disturbed at just how evil the laugh sounded. Demon brat, the hero. Naruto finally ended his fit of laughter. Sarutobi cringed. It seemed that Naruto had heard one of the more popular names that were spoken behind his back and occasionally to his face. Naruto, I am truly sorry for the way you have been treated. It is unfair. We can talk about that later, but right now we need to know what exactly happened to you and what we can do to fix it. Fine, Naruto spoke half-heartedly. He then proceeded to tell the old man about the giant mouth and eyes, and what strange words were spoken to him after he was eaten. Sarutobi pondered on the strange happening and came to the logical conclusion that the fox had somehow given the boy a new body after his was destroyed in the explosion. The Hokage could not, however, figure out why the fox would give Naruto his own body. Was it the only way to continue living, or was it some kind of trick? At least Naruto was alive, although now he had to figure out what to do with him. He had long heard of the folklore that Kitsune could shape-shift into a human form. That did not change the fact that he didn't know if it was true or how to accomplish such a trick. In the tales he was told, there was something about putting part of their fox magic into a Hoshi no Tama or star ball. This was usually a jewel of some sort the fox always kept near. In legend, if you were to take the star ball, you could extract a favor from the Kitsune. The problem with the Kyuubi was that it was a bijou, one of the 9-tailed demons. He had no idea if it was really considered a Kitsune. The only answer he could come up with was to somehow talk to the fox inside of Naruto. My boy, do you know of meditation? The fox boy gave a hesitant nod. Do you know how to meditate? The Hokage asked hopefully. Of course, his answer was a negative. He sighed. They were going to have to do this the hard way. Naruto, I will have to knock you unconscious. I want you to think of the place with the puddles and nothing else, okay? When he received a nod, he walked directly in front of the large nose and performed a strong sleep-inducing genjutsu. His rotten luck as of late continued and Naruto's large vulpine eyes just stared at him in confusion. The genjutsu had no effect. Okay, they were going to have to do this the real hard way. The Sandaime slowly climbed onto Naruto's giant muzzle. When he was securely in place by gluing his feet with chakra, he bit his thumb, went through a few hand seals, and slammed his hand down on the red fur. To Naruto's surprise, a large monkey wearing clothes appeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto wasn't the only one surprised, though. Enma, Sarutobi's summon animal, screamed like a little girl monkey after he stared into Naruto's evil crimson eyes. After he jumped off of Sarutobi and the Hokage finally stopped laughing, Enma was given a short explanation. Then, according to the old man's instructions, the Monkey King transformed into a giant adamantine staff. Okay Naruto, this will hurt you more than it hurts me. Naruto barely had time to sputter before the Hokage brought the staff down hard onto his massive skull. Everything was silent for a moment until Naruto let out a loud howl. What the hell, old man? I am sorry, Naruto. That was supposed to knock you out. But no matter, just slip into blissful unconsciousness. Naruto did not like the crazed look in the old man's eyes. What he didn't know was that Sarutobi had superimposed both the Yandaime's face and a stack of paperwork over his large foxy head. Take that, you yellow-haired bastard. You want some more paperwork? Thought the Hokage as he repeatedly bashed Naruto on the head. The nearby ANBU were now more afraid of their Hokage than some elaborate trick by the Kyuubi. Needless to say, Naruto's head hurt later, but he was still painfully conscious. Conscious and grumbling about crazy old men who like to beat people with sticks. By that time, it would not be long before the sunrise and the Hokage decided to move Naruto to someplace more secure than the forest outside Konoha. They did not need a bunch of people freaking out because the Kyuubi was back. There was no doubt that some word had spread back in the village, but he would figure out some way to explain things later. Right now he had to hide a 500-foot fox. The best place that came to mind was the Forest of Death. It would usually be suicide for an 8-year-old to live there, but not when that 8-year-old is a giant fox. So, the Hokage had the ANBU untie Naruto's legs and the whole troop, fox included, headed slowly and quietly for the Forest of Death. Several ANBU contributed chakra and concentration for a giant invisibility genjutsu to hide boy's now massive body. It took about an hour to sneak into the Forest of Death. The fox's legs were tied together once again, and an area genjutsu covered up the giant's presence. This was more than enough as the forest hid most of the fox from outside view, and even then, the part of the fox that was above the treetops was far enough from civilization that no one would even notice. Everyone was very tired at that point, so the Hokage had the ANBU take shifts staying awake while the rest went to sleep. The old man himself decided to rest in the forest to make sure no other incidents occurred. Naruto, despite being tied up in an uncomfortable manner, managed to fall asleep rather quickly. When the Hokage awoke the next morning, it was to the sight of a huge red fox sprawled out as far as it could while still being tied up. It was disturbing how it could look cute yet evil at the same time. As it inhaled and exhaled in its sleep, the leaves and small limbs of trees in front of its nose swayed to and fro. Shaking his head, Sarutobi left instructions for the ANBU on site and then headed into the village to do damage control. He eventually left the forest and entered the main thoroughfare of the village. To his immense pleasure, there was no great pandemonium. He was sure that there were rumors flying around, but at least there was no hysterical screaming. First he went to his office, as he knew there would be representation from the council there to summon him. Sure enough, there was. He also noticed his stack of paperwork had increased. So, in a foul mood, he followed the man to the council room. Sarutobi was already upset with them because the baby he ordered the ANBU to retrieve ended up being the daughter of a poor farmer. He wanted a baby from a clan so they wouldn't have to endure the hardships Naruto had to. The Shiki Fujin, or Dead Demon Imprisonment Seal, did not require an infant, just a child whose chakra coils have not developed and hardened into their final shape. There were definitely children of that requirement in the clans, and yet the child he received for the sealing was from a family with no standing in the community. Finally, Sarutobi arrived in the council room where he was met with the faces of the clan heads and top members of the village. Danzo was also there. He had no idea why Danzo was considered important. The man had just been a thorn in his side since as long as he could remember. What was worse was the fact that his old teammates were Danzo's staunchest supporters. The Hokage had let things go for a long time because of his old teammates, but maybe it was time to cut those ties. They were his advisors and yet they seemed to like Danzo better. Besides, he didn't really like them when he was still in a team with them. All the chatter died down once he coughed loudly. He then proceeded to tell everyone of the situation. Predictably, a large portion of the council called for Naruto's death. Not only would he never execute Naruto, but he wasn't sure he could kill him. He cannot be killed, spoke the Sandaime. Which of you will learn the Shiki Fujin and give up your soul to seal him, because I will not. That shut them up. Now all he had to do was wait until Danzo spoke, which would be in about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hokage-sama, we should see this as a great opportunity. Naruto could be turned into the greatest weapon Konoha has ever had. Danzo had a particularly creepy light in his eyes as he finished his passionate speech. Danzo, he is a 500-foot-tall fox demon now. The Hokage said dryly, he already is a weapon. Danzo scowled as he heard a few snickers. How dare the Hokage make him look like a fool? Now that you have been informed of the situation, Sarutobi spoke before anyone else could babble. I must return to the forest. Hamura-san and Kohara-san, a minute of your time please. As the three former teammates left the council room, Sarutobi did not miss the glance the other two shared with Danzo. So they were all part of some little club now, huh? Well, too bad for them that he was not in a mood to stomach it anymore. Dealing with the headache a nine-tailed fox causes was enough to make even his saintly patience run short. My friends, Sarutobi started, I seem to no longer require your services as my advisors. What? Both of his now ex-advisors shouted. Indeed. Please refrain from entering the council room and other such restricted areas now. I must go, but I'll see you both around. With that, Sarutobi left the slack-jawed duo, his mood considerably better, and headed to the Forest of Death to check on Naruto. Naruto awoke feeling rather stiff due to being tied up in an awkward position. He was confused at first but eventually remembered. It saddened him to think about it. When he wasn't normal before, how would people treat him now? He wasn't worried about them hurting him physically, but he did want to be accepted. He was pretty sure the Hokage still thought of him as Naruto, but what about the kids his age? The parents did not let them play with Naruto, but he never gave up hope that someday they would. Now that he was a huge demon they would all just scream and run away. And what about the Ichiraku Ramen man and his daughter, Ayam? Besides the Hokage, they were the only ones that were nice to him. Admittedly, that was the reason he liked ramen so much. He associated it with the kindness he received from the older man and his daughter. Also, he did have a little bit of a crush on Ayam. It was only natural. She was one of the three people who would give him the time of day. She was cute, and she even smelled like ramen. She was a few years older than him, but that didn't deter him one bit. The only way she could be more perfect for him is if she wore large amounts of orange. He snapped out of his musings when a particularly strong itch assaulted him behind his ear. He couldn't reach it since he was tied up, so he tried to turn his head and rub it against the ground. He didn't take notice of how much he was freaking out the ANBU still stationed there. Naruto was rolling around on the ground, knocking down trees, when the Sandaime returned. Naruto, what the hell are you doing? Shouted the old man. My ear itches, damn it. Naruto shouted back. The Hokage rolled his eyes before shouting, hold still. Naruto calmed down, and then held still while lying on his back with his legs in the air. Then, Sarutobi walked next to Naruto's head where the ear joined the skull and scratched with both hands. I can't even feel that, old man. Naruto whined. The Hokage frowned, but then pulled out a kunai in each hand. He then proceeded to dig them into the flesh and move them all around. Apparently, this worked as Naruto's legs snapped the bindings. Then, one of his hind legs started kicking the air. Sarutobi was amused at his actions but disturbed that the bindings did next to nothing. Eventually, Naruto stood up, as his legs were getting stiff, and stretched like a cat, or in this case, a fox. The Sandaime was going to speak to Naruto, but all of a sudden, a deep growl filled the air. Sarutobi, fearing that the boy was upset, questioned him. What's wrong, Naruto? He asked. Naruto looked as sheepish as a fox could, and if he wasn't covered in red fur, his blush would have been visible. That was my stomach, he said. I'm pretty hungry. You got anything to eat? Well, the Hokage started. Damn. Mitarashi Anko was jumping through the trees of the Forest of Death. It had been 4 days since the Hokage had declared Training Area 44 off limits, but this was where she liked to hang out. It was her spot, so she just jumped the fence and bounded away into the trees. She was never one for rules or chain of command. As she made her way towards the tower in the center of the forest, she heard a strange noise. Making sure to conceal herself, the snake Jounin snuck closer. The sight that greeted her just confused her more. Why were there cows in the Forest of Death? Not only that, since when do ANBU herd cattle? This was too strange. She was about to march up to the ANBU and demand to know what the hell they were doing with cows in her forest. But something else happened first. Now, what Anko didn't know was that since the Kyuubi was essentially made up of the 5 elements, it was very close to nature. Being very close to nature, it fit into a forest without even giving off a presence. Also, large trees were in the way of her view and she hadn't bothered to look up. Finally, Naruto was not making any noise or movement in order to keep the cows calm. So, Anko was rather surprised when, all of a sudden, a giant gaping maw, equipped with huge razor-sharp fangs, descended from seemingly nowhere and tore into the defenseless bovine. So surprised was she, that she did something very unlike herself. She screamed like a little girl. Naruto would drink water from a river that ran through the Forest of Death, so that wasn't a problem. They had given the boy-turned-fox some cooked meat and some grain, but this was not enough. Sarutobi decided that he couldn't provide Naruto with a substantial meal except for a few days a week. That being said, he used village funds to buy a herd of cattle. You can't cook them? Naruto asked. We could, the Sandaime replied, but it would be a lot of work. Naruto still looked hesitant. He was by no means a vegetarian, but the cows had such big innocent eyes. This was a ninja village, and killing was the main profession, but he was still a child. He had even hunted and fished for food when he was out of money before, but the other wild animals he had killed were not alive when he had eaten them. It was just meat then. Oh God, the cows were even looking at him now. He noticed that the old man was backing away, so he called out to him. Where are you going, old man? I'm going out of the range of the blood spatter, the Hokage replied. Plus, I don't really want to see the carnage up close. You suck, old man. The Sandaime snickered and kept backing up. The ANBU that had brought the cattle to the Forest of Death did not seem that pleased to be left so close now that their leader was backing away. He stared at the cows for a while. He would do this quickly so they didn't suffer. Was he supposed to eat them whole? Oh well, he was really hungry. He closed his eyes and offered a silent apology to the cows for eating them alive. With that, his eyes flung open and he swooped down on his prey. He got quite a few cattle with one bite and lifted them in the air, where he chomped down on them quickly. Then he heard the scream. Naruto was startled enough to open his mouth and swing his head to where he heard the noise. He noticed that the cows were slipping out, so he shut his mouth. But not before a large amount of blood was flung out from the force of his head turning. The result was a very bloody, very freaked out kunoichi. And flashback. Once Anko was told the situation, she made everyone present swear to never tell anyone about her scream. The penalty, she told them, was death by choking on your own nuts. She told Naruto that she would use a ladder if she had to. The men, the fox, and even some local wildlife that Naruto hadn't yet eaten, all took a moment to cower together. After that incident, Anko showed up in the Forest of Death almost every day. She would keep Naruto company since the ANB that guarded him gave little conversation. Having endured a similar situation of loneliness and general scorn by the village, Anko could guess how the boy's childhood had affected him. While she knew he was being mistreated, she really wasn't the caring type, so she didn't help him. She didn't feel bad about not being there for him, as she was still pretty young and dealing her own problems, but since he was in her forest now, it wasn't too much trouble to help him out. So, this is how Mitarashi Anko ended up reading various books to a giant demon fox in the Forest of Death. The boy could barely read, so not only did this activity keep both of them from dying of boredom, it also taught him kanji. The boy turned Kitsune learned alarmingly quickly, which was necessary considering how little patience Anko possessed. The books that the snake-summoning Kunoichi chose to read were not always meant for little boys, but she reasoned that with Naruto being a giant demon fox, the usual social customs did not apply. In any case, Anko didn't follow what most people thought was normal behavior anyway, so even if this foxy change had never happened to him, she wouldn't care. If he wants to be read to, he damn well better not complain about her choices in literature. Naruto, in fact, did not complain. Not just for the fact that Anko seemed to be able to scare a 500-foot-tall demon fox, but also because Ika Paradise was really interesting. Naruto had heard of and even seen some things like what was written in the smutty orange book, but he never could figure out what was so great about it. Now, probably due to having a fully developed, albeit foxy body, he was starting to appreciate the opposite sex. Naruto was even having strange fantasies about mounting Anko. He did his best to crush these thoughts down for 3 reasons. He was still slightly confused, he didn't want to crush Anko's comparatively small body, and he didn't doubt that Anko could succeed where the yondaime, and everybody failed and killed the shit out of him. Sometimes Anko would not go back to her apartment at night. On nights such as these, she would sleep on top of the giant fox. Even though his fur was hard and almost sharp, Anko would slip her lithe body between the massive hairs and fall asleep against his warm skin. Naruto loves it when she stays with him. Although he can barely feel her tiny body, it feels unimaginably good to know there is someone with him during the night. It's ironic that he had to become a hideous monster in order to have someone lay with him. His biggest regret is that he cannot hold her, for his giant claws would tear her apart. Anko also helped with his meditation. She and the Sandaime would try and get Naruto to breathe correctly and concentrate. When he would drift off, Anko would kick him as hard as she could, right between his eyes. Sarutobi even tried asking Naruto koan, or irrational questions meant to center concentration during meditation. It was amusing and yet disturbing to see a giant red fox try to clap with one paw. After quite a few frustrating meditation sessions, Naruto finally found himself in a large sewer system. He noticed right away that he was no longer a huge fox, but once again a little boy in orange. God, he missed orange. Anyway, he also noticed that he had kept the tails even in his mindscape. He didn't really mind this, as having tails was extremely fun. It was like having 9 additional arms, even if he could not really control them well. One of his favorite things to do in the forest was to try and move the tails to his will. It was slow going, comparable to learning how to walk, but it was coming along nonetheless. Snapping out of his musings, he set off through the shallow, murky water and went looking for the Kyubi. After traveling a ways down the dark corridors of his mind, he found a huge room with a ceiling so high, he could not see it. At one end of this room, there was a large gate with bars larger in diameter than his abdomen. Holding this gate shut was a simple piece of paper with the word Seo written upon it. Squinting through the bars, Naruto could make out the astral form of the demon fox. It currently looked to be sleeping, with its transparent tails wrapped around its equally transparent body. Naruto would have just screeched for the Kyubi to wake the hell up, but the Hokage had smacked him with his monkey pole, and that sounds very dirty, and told him not to piss the Kyubi off when they needed his cooperation. So, Naruto walked up slowly to the gates and spoke rather softly. "Excuse me, Kyubi-san," he was not used to using honorifics. "Kyubi-san, please wake up." The great fox didn't even twitch. Hey, wake up." The fox stirred slightly when Naruto spoke a little louder. Gathering his breath, Naruto shouted, "Kyubi-san! Wake!" That was as far as the boy got before the demon slammed up against the bars, snarling and clawing viciously. Naruto was shocked, not only by the power and evil ki the fox emitted, but by the ferocity of the Kyubi's attack. The fox continued to attack the gate for a full minute with everything it had. To the boy, this seemed like the apocalypse was occurring right in front of him, and being restrained by a piece of paper. After the fox stopped, it remained there, panting from the exertion of its attack. Naruto didn't really understand what happened. The Kyubi went from sleeping to psychotic natural disaster before he could even blink. Now it was staring at him with so much hate, it could cause a heart attack. "Why have you awoken me?" The fox screamed at Naruto. Its fangs seemed to drip blood, which on contact with the floor, burst into flame. "Kyubi-san," Naruto was scared shitless, but he still refused to use anything more respectful than san. Although he himself now had this very body, The QB could pull off the whole evil incarnate thing way better than he could. Also, he still needed information from the fox, so he had to somehow placate it. I'm sorry, QB-san, but I have given you a new body of immense power. What possible reason could you have to disturb me now? Speak, whelp. I hope you have not managed to destroy this one as well. There's nothing wrong, and thanks for helping me before, but I still have some problems. Problems? Boy, these better be problems of life and death to keep me from my slumber. Thinking quickly, Naruto answered, they are, QB-san. I might starve to death if I don't find a way to change my size. The Hokage told me that Kitsune were able to shape-shift. That is acceptable. The QB told him as it settled down, and rested its head on its paws in front of the gate. Naruto was surprised by the complete turnaround in attitude that the QB underwent. What the hell was that? Naruto had lost the polite act with all the strangeness of the situation. What was what? The QB yawned. The whole blowing up in rage thing. Naruto yelled. There is one thing that arouses my ire more than any other. That is being awoken. The QB said seriously. Why do you think I attacked your village, Buha? Naruto sputtered. Yes, you saw how angry I get upon being awoken. I attacked your village because one of your shinobi woke me up rather rudely. Flashback. Approximately 8 years earlier, QB, currently the size of a normal fox, lay resting under a tree in a sunny clearing outside of the village hidden in the leaves. Suddenly, a commotion approaches in the form of a young man with black hair. Yash! And if I cannot run through the forest on my hands, I will kill a homeless person with a hammer. I will do 500 one-legged squats. The QB stirred slightly, but remained asleep. The youthful young man paused in his self-task as he took note of the red fox. Such began the greatest disaster to ever befall the leaf. Yash! A youthful Kitsune. I have heard tales of their swiftness and cunning. I shall awaken him and challenge him to a race through the forest. He approached the sleeping nine-tailed fox with a small twig. Excuse me, Kitsune-san. That was as far as teenager got. As soon as he poked the QB, it erupted in violence and power. As it abruptly expanded to its true size, the youth was knocked unconscious and flung several hundred feet away by the explosion of Yukai. The shinobi in the village saw the huge fox and mounted a defense to its assumed rampage. The rest, as they say, is history. The man who woke up the QB would later be found among the dead and injured with no memory of the previous 2 weeks. End flashback. You killed all those people, just because someone woke you up? Naruto was about ready to bash his head into the floor. Well, the QB yawned. Sloth is my sin, but I am still a demon. What are you talking about? Naruto asked. I was once just a normal 9-tailed Kitsune before I was chosen to be a Bijou. I was, in fact, the laziest Kitsune. Wait, Naruto interrupted. Isn't the quick brown fox supposed to jump over the lazy dog? I'm a red fox, and don't interrupt me. Anyway, I was so lazy. I was chosen to become the Bijou that corresponded to the sin of sloth. Every one of the tailed beasts represented one of the 9 major sins. The one-tailed tanuki represents wrath. The 2-tailed cat represents lust. Blah blah blah. Let us speak on the matter of your size. Yeah, the old man said something about a star ball and Kitsune magic. Yes, the Hoshi no Tama is what Kitsune use to store a portion of their power in order to shape-shift. It is usually a small ball or jewel, but I am no ordinary Kitsune. My whole body is a Hoshi no Tama. I don't understand. Allow me to show you. Even though you have my body and are currently looking at only my soul, its appearance is a representation of how I viewed myself. The same goes for your body here in this mindscape. You have grown used to having tails, but still see your body as that of a human. Now watch closely. The sharp red hair of the QB seemed to shrink into nothingness. On the bald skin of the fox, intricate tattoos or seals could be seen. These seals run across my entire being. They are my Hoshi no Tama. It acts as dimensional storage for my power and body when I wish to change into a smaller form. I can change into a human form because I know what it looks like and I have enough body to form into a human shape. But how do you change into a human? Naruto asked. You now possess my actual body. That is why you are smart enough to actually converse with me and understand the concepts you are hearing, for it is above the capacity of one of so young an age. But make no mistake, even though you possess the thinking power of an ancient Kitsune, you do not have the knowledge. You are now a Kitsune in body and mind, but you only possess the memories and knowledge of a human boy. Since you have my body, you can shape-shift exactly in the same manner as me. You should be able to transform into your human self rather easily since you know what it feels like. To do this, concentrate on the form your old body and collapse in on yourself. Since you are your own Hoshi no Tama, you must stuff yourself inside yourself. Strangely, this made sense to Naruto. He guessed it was because he was thinking with the demon's brain. He was about to leave when he remembered some of the stories about Kitsune that the old Hokage had told him. "What can you tell me about Kitsune magic?" said the fox boy as his tails wagged slyly. The Hokage and Anko had been waiting patiently for about an hour after Naruto fell into a trance. They hoped that the boy could get what information they needed from the demon without a major altercation. Suddenly, Naruto shook himself out of his stupor and grinned. "I know what to do, old man. I just gotta imagine my old body while stuffing myself into myself." "I don't really know what you mean by the last part, Naruto, but go ahead and try," said the Sandaime. Anko had some interesting ideas on stuffing oneself inside of oneself, but she kept those thoughts quiet. "Here goes," announced Naruto, and he began to concentrate. After a few moments, a bluish-green ethereal flame surrounded the giant fox and it began to shrink. Slowly, it began to take a human form. When the transformation was complete, Naruto stood in all of his naked human glory. However, he didn't look exactly like he did before. If one was to describe him, it would be as if the Yondaime took steroids and drew whiskers on his face. "Is that really how you see yourself, Naruto-kun?" the Sandaime asked, looking at the huge muscular man. Naruto laughed nervously. "He may have a little bit of an ego. You're a little bit shorter than that, boy," the Hokage sighed. "Oh, okay." Naruto relented and shrunk until he looked relatively like his old self. "Mao, I like the first body better." Anko pouted while walking around the Naruto. She grabbed him playfully on his naked butt, and only then did the boy realize he was without clothes. "Eep!" the blonde exclaimed as he grabbed the Hokage's pointy hat and held it over his privates. The Hokage sighed happily as the boy blushed and Anko laughed. The Sandaime sat cross-legged as he exhaled a large breath of smoke. He then held his pipe upside down with his right hand and rapped the underside with the heel of his left hand. The spent load of tobacco fell from the bowl of the pipe and was scattered in the wind. Satisfying himself that no great amount of ashes remained to dirty his pocket, the elder Hokage gently tucked his pipe inside his robes. Now that the smoke no longer dominated his sense of smell, the aroma of the salty ocean breeze invaded Sarutobi's nostrils. He let a smile come across his face as he gazed out onto the horizon where the water met the endless blue sky. Standing up and stretching, he continued to admire the view, a view made even more magnificent due to being several hundred feet in the air. Walking down from his perch atop of Naruto's gigantic head and onto the snout of the snout, the Hokage turned to look into the boy's eyes, which could not focus on him without crossing since the old man was so close. Even though the eyes were enormous and not of his species, Sarutobi could easily see the amazement shining in those red orbs. "Breathtaking, isn't it, my boy?" the Sandaime stated more than asked. This was Naruto's first time seeing the ocean, and the boy couldn't help but be awe-stricken. Even if he was now over 500 feet tall and even longer in length, the body of the Ninetales was still tiny compared to something so vast. Naruto didn't respond at first, the only sound being the crashing of the waves upon the shore. Eventually, he inhaled a huge breath of the coastal air, closing his eyes as he memorized the scent. Finally, he spoke to the old man on his snout. "This is so awesome." He then got a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Hold on, old man." Sarutobi's eyes widened when he guessed what Naruto meant to do. He almost fell off when the giant fox sped forward and took a running leap, clearing the beach completely, as he had jumped before the break of the tree line, and rocketed toward the water. Luckily for the Hokage, Naruto had underestimated just how large he was, and the fox ended up just standing on the ocean floor with the water coming up to his knees. This was impressive as they were several hundred yards from the shore thanks to Naruto's humongous leap. "Stupid boy," Sarutobi admonished. "If you would have dove under, the force probably would have crushed my old bones." Naruto looked about as sheepish as he could get, which was not that much considering he was a fox. "Sorry, old man. I'm gonna to go out deeper and try to swim, so get off if you don't want to get wet." The old man obliged and jumped off Naruto's now lowered snout. He landed upon the water, staying atop the surface with chakra, and headed back to shore. Once he reached the beach, he sat down and watched Naruto play in the water. The fox boy had run farther out into the ocean in search of deeper water. He was rolling around and splashing in the water, just generally behaving like kid. It had been a year and a half since Naruto acquired the body of the fox demon, and Sarutobi had taken the boy on a trip to the coast. Not only did Naruto get to experience the ocean, but he could be in his full form without causing panic and mayhem, as this area was rather devoid of people. The only place that Naruto could freely practice moving around in his full fox form was in an unpopulated area. Even though they could journey outside of the fire country where there would be no irrational fear of foxes, he would still be recognized as one of the tailed beasts. Sarutobi recognized that news about Naruto would eventually get out, but he did not want the other nations or hidden villages to know of Naruto's situation just quite yet. The strongest of the Bijou was one hell of a trump card. As the aged fire shadow sat there on the cool sand, his thoughts drifted to the past year and a half. He remembered when Naruto first learned to shape-shift into a human form. Flashback. Anko and the Hokage finished laughing at the naked and embarrassed boy in a clearing in the Forest of Death. As Sarutobi gave Naruto his robe to cover himself, he noticed something peculiar. The boy's appearance seemed to be that of his original form, but on closer inspection, there were some discrepancies. Naruto's skin was all one color, unlike real skin which had varying shades. The same with his hair, it was just yellow. There were no natural highlights, making it look like it was dyed. Another thing that stood out was the fact that Naruto's musculature was rather undefined, not that he expected him to appear buff or even fit. It was just unnatural to not possess the contours that a human body should have. Finally, he noticed that there were no blemishes or even hairs, except for the top of the boy's head, anywhere his body. All in all, he looked like a living doll, a fairly common beginner's mistake when using the Henj no Jutsu. Naruto, the Sandaime began, gaining the attention of both Naruto and Anko. I am happy that you have been able to transform into your original body, but we are going to have to work on your skills slightly. I am able to tell by looking at you that you are concealing your true appearance. This is something students often work on at the Ninja Academy, including as much detail as possible with the transformation. Huh. Oh, I getcha. I actually didn't expect the Hoshi no Tama or the Kitsune illusion to work on the first try. But hey, 1 out of 2 ain't bad for just starting out. What are you talking about, Naruto? Anko asked the question the Hokage was thinking. When I shrunk was actually something different than changing to look like the old me. Naruto's explanation was rather lacking, but he got the hint to continue when the Hokage and Anko just stared at him with dull expressions on their faces. When I changed sizes, I used the Hoshi no Tama thing. I also tried to use a Kitsune illusion, but I guess it wasn't very convincing. After he said this, he released the illusion on his body. He was briefly consumed once again by the ethereal flames before they dissipated to reveal his actual appearance. The first thing that Anko and the Sandaime noticed was that Naruto now had red hair, the color of freshly spilled blood. Also, the boy's eyes were a hateful crimson and the pupils were mere slits. Naruto's skin was also deathly pale, that is, what part of it was visible. Over almost all of his skin, there were intricate seals inked in black. If they were able to look close enough, these same seals could be seen on his hair, in his eyes, and even on each individual cell of his entire body. Regardless, the main thing was that the boy looked rather hideous. Naruto was shaped like a human, but his overall appearance was that of a demon. The Hokage decided to ask more about the technique the boy mentioned rather than dwell on his image. What exactly is this Kitsune illusion, Naruto? Sarutobi asked. He had some idea due to the folk legends he had heard, but the green-blue energy had intrigued him. He thought the fox's yukai was red. It's pretty sweet, old man. It uses Kitsune magic to mess with light, sound, and even other things, Naruto explained excitedly. By the way, you know how you mentioned something about foxfire? Well, that's the greenish-blue stuff you saw earlier. The Kyuubi said that the legends aren't really true about foxfire. It's not really fire, it's just the energy that Kitsunes use. He said it's kinda like our chakra, they're both energy, just different types. Apparently fox magic just looks like blue flames when you use a lot of it. That is interesting, Naruto, the Sandaime replied, but now the most important thing is learning to disguise yourself a little better. End flashback. Sarutobi stopped his reminiscing when he heard Naruto making noises out in the ocean. The boy, or rather giant fox, was thrashing about in the water. Apparently he had stuck his head under the surface and was now sputtering due to the taste of the salt water and the sting it left in his eyes. The Hokage laughed at his antics until Naruto accidentally swiped his tails in just the right way. Naruto must have used his yukai by mistake, and by stroke of luck it reacted in a specific way with his tails and the water. Since it was pure chance, the attack, if one were to call it that, was nowhere near its full potential. But Sarutobi still gawked at the small tsunami that was created and sent out to sea. They were lucky to be on the southern coast of Fire Country because there were no islands of the mainland in this direction. If they had been on the eastern coast, Wave Country, and the western coast of Water Country would have been pissed. Speaking of Water Country, the village hidden in the mist better not start anything with Konoha because Naruto could apparently drown their whole country. He would have to develop that tsunami ability more, and he would also have to learn to walk atop water. Now was as good a time as any to try and teach Naruto that. The boy had yet to begin training his control, or even the use of his yukai. Sarutobi figured that he should just treat it as really potent and evil chakra, as he had no experience with the demonic form of energy. He supposed he would have the boy learn to tree climb in his human form, or just a regular-size fox form, as that was the beginning exercise. After the boy did that, he would move him onto the water walking exercise while still in a smaller form. He wanted to use this time at the ocean to their advantage and let Naruto practice water walking in his full form. He normally wouldn't expect a beginner to progress through these chakra control exercises so quickly, but Naruto had proven to be exceedingly intelligent. The fox's brain was the most advanced thinking machine that Sarutobi had ever encountered. Before the body switch, Naruto had been he loved the boy, but the boy was about as sharp as a sack of wet mush. Now though, every thought the boy had would be processed by the advanced mind of the fox, allowing Naruto to surpass humans in thinking power by several-fold. This didn't make him knowledgeable or wise, but once Naruto got the information, he would soon get there. The reason he didn't start teaching the boy earlier was because of some earlier problems, namely, Naruto's inability to use hand seals or jutsu. Flashback. It was about a week after Naruto left the Forest of Death. The Sandaime was trying to get Naruto to access his yokai. He had shown Naruto the ram hand seal, as that was often used to gather chakra, but so far there were no results. Naruto was grunting with a generally constipated look on his face. If Sarutobi hadn't been the one who told him to access his energy, he would have asked the boy if he was actively trying to shit his pants. Finally, he called one of the ANBU who was present during the initial incident, who also happened to be a Hyuga. Hokage-sama, the bird-masked ninja greeted upon arrival in the Sandaime's backyard, the place he chose to instruct Naruto. Bird-san, said the Hokage, would you be so kind as to inspect Naruto's coils while he attempts to draw on his energy? Hi Hokage-sama, the ANBU stated and formed a seal to activate his Byakugan. Sarutobi told Naruto to try again, and grunting once again filled the private training grounds. Excuse me, Hokage-sama, but I think there might be a problem, the Hyuga spoke up in monotone. The Hokage nodded for him to continue and Naruto stopped grunting in order to hear. I cannot see any chakra coils, or rather, coils of any kind inside of this child. The Hokage sighed deeply as he heard this. It was just another problem for the poor boy. Naruto, however, was livid. God damn it! In his anger and frustration, Naruto didn't notice that he was starting to leak a vile red energy. The Hokage and the ANBU did though, and the Hyuga still had his bloodline limit activated. He voiced what he saw to his leader. Sir, his red chakra springs forth from every part of his body. It does not originate in the core of his body as in a normal human being. As he has no coils, it just seems to pass through and out of his every cell. The Hokage was happy that the boy had found his yokai, but it seemed another obstacle presented itself. Jutsu used hand seals. Hand seals manipulated chakra via the coil system and tenketsu points. Since Naruto had no coils, hand seals would accomplish nothing. Therefore, he would not be able to perform jutsu. Naruto was pissed when he was told. End flashback. After that, Sarutobi did not concentrate on focusing Naruto's yokai. What he did spend time on was teaching the boy martial arts. Taijutsu was probably the most important aspect of being a ninja. Simultaneously, it was also one of the most overlooked. Once someone learned a few katas and sparred a few times with a peer, they thought they could move on to other areas of the ninja, like flashy jutsu. The reason why most shinobi from clans did better than others was more because of the constant martial arts training since childhood than any specialized jutsu. He normally would have assigned someone to educate the boy. However, Naruto was not the most loved person in the Leaf Village, especially after the incident that gave him his new body. He told the populace that the huge feeling of impending doom associated with the expulsion of a large amount of yokai was nothing but a hoax by a foreign enemy. The story was basically that ninja abducted Naruto and used an elaborate genjutsu that simulated the fox's yokai and malevolence in order to draw out the Hokage where they would assassinate him. To him this sounded rather unbelievable, but to the villagers and quite a few ninja, it was acceptable. He supposed that if you could hate Naruto for protecting everyone from violent death, you could be stupid enough to believe some overcomplicated and obviously fabricated story. Even though the cover-up went over well, there was still a rise in animosity toward the blonde container. By the time Naruto was able to shape-shift and go back to his apartment in the village, it was trashed. There was really nothing of value in his apartment, but having derogatory remarks written on his walls really sucked. Sarutobi had told Naruto that he would have the apartment cleaned, but the boy had finally tasted something other than social isolation while in the Forest of Death, and thus, he did not want to live alone anymore. He told the Hokage that he wanted to live with him, and that he wouldn't have to babysit him, or anything since he had been making it on his own for quite a while. Due to his increased thinking capacity, he realized he had been used as a tool of the village since his infancy, and that he was entitled to some things. One of these was companionship. The long story short, he ended up living with the venerable Hokage. Since he was right there every day, Sarutobi figured that it would be easiest for himself to teach Naruto. Any instructor he would have selected would have had to meet 3 criteria. They had to be skilled, they had to harbor no ill will toward Naruto, and they had to be willing. This definitely cut the field down, and he would not have Naruto picking up any of Guy's eccentricities. He felt that way even before Naruto told him of the reason for the Kyuubi's attack, which he would speak of to anyone, especially Guy, as it would break the man. So, the Hokage just used shadow clones to teach the boy when he was busy and did so himself when he had the time. They started out with a few katas of a relatively standard Konoha taijutsu style. Naruto picked these up rather quickly with his new super foxy memory. The thing that helped the most, though, was sparring with Sarutobi or one of his clones. While in his human child form, the Sandaime did not have to try very hard to kick Naruto's ass, but the boy was progressing quickly. 2 of the problems for children with taijutsu were their small reach and weak muscles. While Naruto had both these problems in his child form, he could also shape-shift into a grown man. When they started thinking along this line, a whole new realm of possibilities was open for Naruto. Naruto could increase the size of his body parts at will, not just his form in whole. This was basically the opposite of the Akimichi's clan techniques. While they expanded their normally sized bodies, Naruto constantly shrunk his giant body. All he had to do in order to replicate those multi-size techniques was to unseal a portion of his body. Also, the greenish-blue energy flames did not accompany only changes in size, as this was a manipulation of previously prepared dimensional space, and not a technique that altered appearance through illusion. Although, later he would learn to control his fox magic energy output so that he did not waste massive amounts, thus allowing it to become visible. Another major difference between Naruto's body manipulation and the Akimichi version was the scale. The clan of Konoha ninja could increase their size to that of a building, but Naruto had the body mass to be the size of a village. He could not be the full size of the Kyuubi while in the shape of a man, as a fox and human had body tissue in different amounts and in different places, but he could get fairly close. Plus, as long as he was increasing his body to epic proportions, it did not really matter if it reassembled a human being. Subtlety was pretty much out the window at that point. Working his body tricks into his style was rather difficult. It was complicated to hit someone while consciously expanding your arm, after all. This was the kind of thing that Naruto and the Hokage would work on for over a year, although taijutsu was more of an ongoing thing, anyway. Another aspect of Naruto's training was learning to perfect his illusion to disguise his appearance. This basically consisted of practicing the illusion and observing people to see details of a normal human body. Basic lessons in anatomy could only help, so Sarutobi showed the boy a few books from his library. That was how Naruto was introduced to the joys of reading. Sure, Anko had read to him in the Forest of Death, and she even taught him lots of kanji, but Naruto's newly found intellect was starved for new and interesting things. Sarutobi's library offered just such a thing. The Hokage did not have any awesome jutsu lying around in his home library, and even if he did, Naruto would be unable to perform them without chakra coils. What the old man did have, however, were several books on chemistry, biology, psychology, and several other subjects. He also had a nice collection of novels that the boy loved to read. Through the books on science, Naruto learned about the word. By reading stories, Naruto learned about interaction between normal people and how messed up his life really was. The more the boy read, the more he realized how horribly he was treated in his own village. Sarutobi shook his head to banish the dark thoughts. This trip was ultimately about getting away from it all. There was no use in drudging up something unpleasant, while he should be relaxing on a sandy beach. The Hokage thought of a good memory to brighten his mood. Surprisingly, this was a memory of Danzu. Flashback. It was a meeting of the village council after he had excused his former teammates. His attendance was not necessary, but he wanted to see what kind of dynamic these meetings had after the expulsion of 2 elder council members. Naruto was still stuck in the Forest of Death, and there was the issue of feeding the giant fox, so he was a little stressed out. The Hokage thought that he had earned the right to blow off some steam. Danzu was toward the back of the council chamber. No doubt he was plotting something and just generally feeling smug. The Hokage caught his eye from across the room and winked at him. The one-armed man immediately ceased looking smug and sat up straighter. The Hokage mimed throwing his head back and laughing, further unnerving Danzu. After a few minutes of sitting there in the council meeting, the Hokage cleared his throat loudly, stopping the proceedings. "Excuse me, honored council, But if I could have your attention for just a few moments, please, spoke the village leader. The council agreed, reluctantly. I would like for each you to stand in turn and briefly explain the reasons why you should be on the council. It was an odd request and nobody moved, so the Hokage continued. Here. I will go first. I believe I am fit to be present because I am the leader of this village. See how it is done. Now we will start in the back and move forward. Even though it was strange, people took turns standing and reciting their credentials and who they represented. As they got closer to Danzu, the Hokage's grin kept widening. By this time, many had deduced what the purpose of this exercise was and they were glancing between the Sandaime and Danzu. Finally, it was Danzu's turn. Everyone in the room was staring directly at him. Slowly he stood up and walked out of the room. The Hokage's laughter echoed after him. End flashback. Ah, that was a good time. Danzu and his old teammates would probably cause problems in the future, but oh well. He brought his attention back to Naruto, who for some reason had a goddamned whale in his humongous jaws. The demon fox brought it to the beach in order to eat it more easily. As he was devouring the giant mammal, Naruto must have felt his incredulous stare because he turned to look at the old man. What? Naruto asked as if he did not have pieces of the large sea creature hanging from his teeth. Nothing, the Sandaime waved the fox off, allowing him to resume eating. After the boy finished, they would head for a town in which to spend the night. Even though he was the greatest ninja in his village, he was still a little old to be roughing it out in the wilderness. This was a vacation, so he might as well be comfortable. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the El Duque for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.